Hi, and welcome to my kitchen. Today I thought I would share with you 10 ingredients that are only in my kitchen because I'm vegan. These are mostly ingredients I use for vegan meats, vegan cheeses, things like that. And some of them are definitely a little bit more out there. If you've ever seen a recipe that's like vegan cookies, no weird ingredients, they're talking about these ingredients, none of these ingredients. And not everything I use here are things that every vegan uses. They're just things that I find really helpful in my vegan cooking. So if you want to follow along, maybe some of these will be interesting to you, let me know at the end of the video. By the way, my name's Val. I made the recipe website Very Vegan Val, and thanks so much for being here today. I'm going to start with a classic, nutritional yeast. Now, some vegans hate nutritional yeast, but a lot of us love it. It is very umami and it is cheesy. It is definitely an ingredient I turn to a lot. I use it in seitan making, I use it in cheese making, and my favorite breakfast that I eat almost every single day is a piece of toast with homemade butter and nutritional yeast on top. If you needed another reason to try nutritional yeast, it is typically fortified with vitamins that you might need in your diet, like vitamin B12. And while you never actually eat a lot of this at one time, it is high in protein, so it is delicious as well as nutritious. Since we were just talking about homemade butter, another thing I have in my kitchen is lecithin granules. So this lecithin is made from soy. You can also, I believe, get sunflower lecithin if you are avoiding soy. And some people take it as a supplement. It has a large amount of your daily phosphorus requirements in it. But I typically use it as an emulsifying agent. So if you're making your own salad dressings or sauces and you don't want them to separate in the fridge, you can add some lecithin and it will help to bring the fats and the oils together. Is this necessary for your average home cook? No, of course not. You can just shake it and that will bring it together too. But where I find it most helpful is in my homemade butter. So for the past maybe 6 months, I've been making my own butter from scratch. I use coconut oil and then a neutral flavored oil and a cultured almond milk. And as you probably know, oil and water do not mix. So the almond milk does not want to integrate itself with the oils. And that is where our friend lecithin comes in handy. I love this because it means I can make myself a vegan butter that does not use palm oil. Again, do I think your average vegan cook has lecithin in their kitchen? Probably not, but if you do, please let me know and let me know what you use it for. Next up, we have TVP, and as you can see, I am basically out of it. TVP stands for textured vegetable protein, and it is a low-fat, high-protein soy product. TVP has been around, I think, since the 1960s. It's been around for a long time, and it is a byproduct of making other soy products. You can get TVP in many different shapes, but most common, I think, are these little granules. Now, the thing to know about using TVP is it has absolutely no flavor on its own. So if you just rehydrate it and then try and eat it, you will not be impressed. It does really well, though, with a little bit of seasoning. I always add some soy sauce to mine, and then other flavors as is appropriate for the dish. So if I want to make it sort of like Mexican chorizo-y, I'll add some smoked paprika, garlic powder, things like that. It's also great for adding sort of a meaty, granular texture to things. So sometimes I'll add it to a pasta sauce or to a vegan sausage I'm making so it has like a little bit more of a bite. My favorite thing about TVP though is that it is shelf stable, it is cheap, and it will be there when you need it. Unless you let yours run out like I am apparently doing. Tapioca starch, also called tapioca flour. They are the same thing. Like many starches, tapioca starch works well as a thickener, but it does something a little bit different, which is compared to, say, cornstarch or potato starch, tapioca starch has a bit of a stretch to it. That makes it perfect to add to vegan cheeses that you want to have a bit of a melty-like quality to them. You can make a really great cashew cheese by just using cashews, whatever flavorings you want, and a little bit of tapioca starch. Now you do of course have to cook it afterwards because you don't want to eat raw starches, and the stretchiness isn't activated until it's heated anyway. So if you want to up your homemade cashew cheeses, try adding a little tapioca starch. Speaking of upping your homemade vegan cheeses, this big old Ziploc here is really my secret. Most of the vegan cheeses I make, I ferment for 24 hours or sometimes more. I do that because while you can mimic the flavor of cheese with things like lemon juice and sauerkraut to get that tang, the best way to mimic the flavor of cheese is to actually ferment your cashews. I just have a whole bunch of different cheese cultures here. Now, depending on what you're doing, you don't really need a lot of these. Bacterial linens you can use to make a washed brine cheese, for example. Thermophilic cultures can be used to ferment at high temperatures. And Penicillium cadmium can be used to grow a rind on your very own vegan brie. The one I use the most often, though, is this. It's a simple mesophilic culture. Mesophilic means medium heat, so it ferments at a medium heat or room temperature. And almost every single cheese I make, I add just a very small amount of this to the cheese starter, and it gives it a delicious cheesy flavor. It's much better than probiotic capsules, which sometimes people use as well. Now, most cheese cultures are grown from actual dairy, but you can find them from vegan sources, which is what I've done. Another thing to note is I keep these in my freezer, and all of them are way outside their expiration date. If you keep them in the freezer, they stay good for much, much longer. I can't say how long. I've never had one go bad. I don't really know. Another one where I would say, do most vegans have a whole series of cheese cultures in their kitchen? Probably not, but I do, and I love it. Another thing I have in my kitchen are chia seeds. Now, chia seeds can be used to make what we call a chia egg, which is essentially about 1 tablespoon of chia seeds and 3 tablespoons of water. You mix that together, it sets, it gels, and it has similar binding properties to an egg, and it can be used in some baking applications. For more information about like how to use a chia egg, you can check the video that's at the top of your screen. And because I have chia seeds around my kitchen, I do occasionally make a chia pudding, which is like such a classic vegan dish, although there's no reason it needs to be. Anyone can make a chia pudding. Essentially whatever liquid you like, some chia seeds, and then you just let it set into a delicious gel. Obviously pair it with some fruit or whatever other mix-ins you like. The other sort of nutritional benefit to chia seeds is that they have omega-3 fatty acids in them, which is something that can otherwise be challenging to find on a vegan diet. Flax is another great source of it, and it can be used to make a flax egg, which is essentially the same as a chia egg. Miso paste. This is my giant tub of miso paste. I use it all the time in my cooking. I love miso. It adds caramelly notes, sweet notes, salty notes, funky notes, all the notes. Now you can get miso paste that is white, that is like this one. I think this is called red or maybe brown. I don't remember, but this is like the most common one. And even black, which is highly fermented and sweeter. Miso paste is an excellent addition to vegan cheeses. It's also so good in vegan meats and amazing in desserts. I love adding miso to my desserts. I made some amazing miso popcorn cookies. I've also made a miso crab apple pie, and I have a delicious recipe for apricot cornbread with a whipped miso maple butter. Delicious. And none of those desserts would I probably try if I wasn't vegan and didn't just have miso in my kitchen. Chickpeas. Now, I know a lot of you might actually have chickpeas in your kitchen, but I don't have chickpeas for the chickpea. I have chickpeas for the liquid in the jar, also known as Aquafaba. This can be a great vegan egg alternative for some applications. The most interesting one, I think, is to make your own vegan meringues. The process is pretty similar to making regular meringues. You just whip up your Aquafaba, add some powdered sugar, and then dry it in the oven. Of course, I also love the chickpeas. I love making hummus. I'll add it to curries. I'll just eat the chickpeas that were in the can for lunch. Often just buy their own, sort of like my version of girl dinner. Anyway, even though I do cook most of my beans from dried, I do always try and have a can of chickpeas so that I have the option of using the Aquafaba. Now, you can actually use the Aquafaba from like any can of beans, but I never do. I really don't know why, because it does work about the same. There actually isn't like much of a flavor difference. You can use it. I just never do. Anyway, chickpeas. Seaweed is something I always like to have in my kitchen. I do usually try and have a ground seaweed so I can use it like a spice, but I could not find it at the moment. So we're gonna talk about my non-ground seaweed. I like to add seaweed anytime you're trying to make something taste a little bit like seafood. Seaweed is salty, briny, oceany, tastes a little bit irony. This particular seaweed was collected in Maine, which is local to me. Love that. There's many different seaweeds. Some are used like a gelling agent. We'll talk about that in a second. Some, like kelp, are really good to make salads, but this seaweed, dulse, is, I think, the best tasting seaweed. So I try and always have some dulse in my kitchen. Again, I usually have powdered dulse, and I can't find mine, so I might actually just process this to turn it into a powder. We'll see, I might be too lazy. The other thing you can do is, depending on what you're making, if you're trying to flavor like a broth, it actually is better to have not powdered seaweed because you can boil it in the water and then you can fish it out, pun, and then you'll have your flavored broth without any little bits of seaweed floating around in it. Some of my other favorite seaweeds are nori, of course, for making sushi, but also it's nowhere near as flavorful as dulse, but it's flavorful still. I also really like kelp because I do like cooking with it, and I do like making salads, and it also works pretty well as a thickening agent. Speaking of seaweeds, Agar Agar powder is something that I love to have in my kitchen. You can get Agar Agar as a powder or as flakes. The powder is more concentrated than the flakes, so just know if you're looking at a recipe, you need to know which one they're using and which one you're using, and they should match. Now, Agar Agar is seaweed, but it's flavorless, and it works kind of similarly to Jell-O. So this is often billed as a vegan gelatin alternative. In order to use agar powder, you add it to whatever liquid you're using. You bring it to a boil, you let that boil for a few minutes, you take it off the heat, and then you let it set. Now, agar is often used in vegan cheese making to turn your liquid cheese into a solid and sliceable cheese. So I like to do that a lot. You can also do some really fun spherification with agar. So if molecular gastronomy sounds fun to you, you can give that a shot. I have a recipe for a vegan caviar that I made many, many years ago now, but it uses agar for the molecular spherification. You can also use it if you want to make like gummies or anything else you might use Jell-O for. And that's 10, I think. But I'm not very good at counting, so I have 2 more. I know what you're thinking. You have I.Am's cat food in your vegan kitchen. No, I just liked the tin and I thrifted it. In this giant tin, I keep my Vital Wheat Gluten. So I like making seitan, and I like being ready to go to make a lot whenever I feel like it. So I keep a lot of Vital Wheat Gluten on hand. Vital wheat gluten is just the protein that is in gluten, and it is the key ingredient in seitan. It forms very strong bonds, and depending on what you do with it, it can take on different textures. For example, you can make a very soft vital wheat gluten by mixing it with other things like tofu and not kneading it very much, and it can be tender. You can also make an incredibly chicken-like vital wheat gluten by kneading it a ton or letting it sit overnight. There's a lot of possibilities for it. Some people make their seitan by washing the flour by hand. So you start with a ball of flour and you wash out all the starches. This eliminates that step. Now, there are people who don't like the taste of vital wheat gluten and they prefer washed flour seitan because they think it tastes better. I do kind of see what they're saying in that case, but for me, the difference is not enough that I want to do the extra work of washing my seitan. Plus, I add a lot of flavoring agents to my seitan, so I'm more than happy to use vital wheat gluten. I don't think this should need to be said, but if you're gluten-free, this is not an ingredient for you. To end my really bad counting, I have this here, black salt. Now, as you've probably noticed, black salt is not black, kind of pink. Let's get you a close-up. So black salt is also called kala namak, and it is an Indian salt. It is a salt, so it's very salty. I mean, it's basically salt, but it also has sulfur in it. And the sulfur combined with the salt actually gives a little bit of an eggy flavor. So if you're making, say, like a tofu scramble and you want it to taste a little bit more like an egg scramble, adding some of this black salt can help bring you to that eggy place. As well as adding it to eggy flavors, though, you can just use it as salt. It will give another level of complexity to your dishes. And if a little bit of a sulfury flavor isn't really your thing, I get it. But if you're open to experimenting with it, it's pretty common in Indian cuisine. I have a dish that I developed. It's inspired by Indian cuisine, and it uses okra and bitter melon and black salt together. And it is definitely a flavor explosion in your mouth. And there we go. 10, Actually 12 ingredients that I probably only have in my kitchen because I'm vegan. I'd really love to know in the comments if any of these were surprising to you, new to you, or one of your favorite ingredients. Additionally, if you have ingredients in your kitchen that you're pretty sure are only there because you're vegan, tell me about them because I'd love to know. Maybe we can all expand our vegan pantries just a little bit. Until next time, please like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks so much. Bye!